I had a mediation a couple of months ago, and one of the issues was who was going to get the stuff out of the storage unit. Turns out this couple had had a storage unit for about 36 months, 3 years. They had about $1,000 worth of stuff in that storage unit once we valued it. That means they had paid $3,600 to store $1,000 worth of stuff. Seems like a bad decision, but hey, guess what? I'm guilty of it. Most of us are. There are 24 million storage units in the United States. That's about 1 unit for every 14 people. The average cost, $90. The average size, about 100 square feet. And the average length of time that people keep them is about 14 months. Folks, your stuff just isn't worth keeping in storage for more than just a couple of months. And there are cases where you're going to need to do that. But let me tell you, the best thing you can do is value your stuff, put it out on the curb, sell it, put it on Facebook, put it on Craigslist. But don't pay good money to store stuff that's just not worth it. That's a bad business decision. So let's say you're married and you have a will, and your will names your wife as the beneficiary of your estate. So if you die, your wife gets everything. And then let's say you get divorced and you forget to change your will after the divorce and you die. What happens? Does your wife, ex-wife now, still get everything? Well, in most states, including Tennessee, there's a provision in the law that says that once you get divorced, then any clause in a will that gives that divorced spouse any of your property is null and void. As a matter of fact, if you want your ex-wife to have some of your property, then you would have to write a new will in order to accomplish that. But no, your ex-wife doesn't get anything if you die after a divorce and you haven't changed your will. What happens in that situation is the person who's next in line to get the property, either the residuary beneficiary or some other person, would get your property at that point. This is for the moms out there that are single mothers that are trying to raise their kids all by themselves. I see a lot of moms in that situation. I see a lot of moms in that situation give everything that they have, every ounce of energy, every bit of money that they have to raise their kids and do so properly. Here's the problem, though. A lot of those mothers neglect themselves in taking care of their kids. And that's not a good thing, because unless you take care of yourself first, you really can't effectively take care of your kids. You may think you can, but you really can't. I took a flight not too long ago, and the first part of the flight when the flight attendant tells you what to do if that mask drops down, and they always say, put the mask on yourself first before you try to put it on a child or another person. The reason why is because until you take care of yourself, you really can't help anybody else. Moms, take care of yourself, and then you can take care of your kids. What happens if you can't afford a lawyer? Can you have a lawyer appointed by the court? Well, in most cases, you can, most civil cases. In criminal cases, you can, because your life and liberty are at stake in criminal cases. In civil cases, the stakes aren't as high. So usually in most civil cases, you cannot have a lawyer appointed. Now, there are certain cases where you do have a right to an attorney in a civil case. If the state is trying to terminate your parental rights, they'll appoint a lawyer to represent you. If there's what we call in Tennessee a dependent neglect case where they're trying to take your kids away from you, not terminate your rights, but take your kids away, then they'll appoint a lawyer. But in most civil cases, such as divorce cases, child custody cases, child support cases, the state cannot and will not appoint a lawyer to represent you. Now, different states are different. So in some states, you may be able to get a lawyer in civil cases. But in Tennessee and most other states, you don't have a right to a lawyer in civil cases. Hey, did you know that once you divorce, you're no longer covered on your spouse's health insurance, nor they on yours? That's very important to keep in mind because you don't want to lose health insurance coverage. A lot of implications if you do. But a lot of people don't realize that. They think that they can continue to be covered on their ex-spouse's health insurance. Well, you become like a stranger to that person when you get divorced. It would be like somebody walking in off the street and saying, hey, I'd like to be covered on your health insurance policy. No health insurance company is going to allow that. And the same with divorcing parties. Once you have a former spouse, that former spouse is basically a stranger to you. Now, most states require divorcing spouses to notify each other of any ability to get continuing health care coverage through COBRA or whatever means. But you need to be on top of that. You don't need to delay because it can cause you problems and be very difficult to go back and recoup that insurance once it lapses. Very important to keep in mind when you get divorced. A couple of years ago, I got a call from a lady named Ivy. She had a son named Tyrone who had just been shot and killed, murdered. Tyrone had a little boy who was 6 years old that worshiped his daddy. The little boy was devastated. Now, Ivy had tried to comfort the little boy. She'd spent a lot of time with that little boy. He'd spent the night over there, night after night. She'd picked him up from school, helped him with his homework. That little boy loved his grandmother. Well, when Tyrone died, the mother of that little boy told Ivy that she would never see him again. So what she did is she hired me to go in and represent her on a grandparent visitation case. We were able in that case to convince the judge that the loss of that substantial relationship between Ivy and that little boy caused a substantial risk of harm to occur with that little boy. He gave the grandmother, Ivy, grandparent visitation with that little boy only one night a month. That's all he could give her. So she gets to see that little boy one Saturday night every month. Doesn't seem like enough, does it?